Life Unrehearsed, brought to you by Lianas Senior Transition Support, helping you navigate home care and senior residences.
And good afternoon. Welcome to Life Unrehearsed. My name's Matt Delvecchio, specializing in life transitions, home care, and the senior living industry.
And I'm more current cycle.
And we seem to be, you're cutting in and out there, Corrie. I'm going to jump in here. And coming up on today's show, learn how to stop impaired driving and support victims of this violent crime. We're going to talk to the Director of Victim Services at Mothers Against Drunk Driving, MAD, that's Steve Sullivan. We'd like to wish everyone a very happy Easter and happy Passover this weekend. And Corrie, happy Passover to you and your family. We're going to check in back with you, Corrie, to see if we've got a little technical problems. Are you there? And okay, she's still choppy, having some Wi-Fi issues. Just to explain how we're doing things now in this age of COVID, I'm in the studio at CJAD, and Corrie is at a home studio. So we're going to continue along on the second half of today's show on Life Unrehearsed, the top 5 trends shaping the future of healthcare in Canada. Really interesting report that just came out, and we're going to talk about these trends that's affecting us all in a positive way. Now, Steve Sullivan joined Mothers Against Drunk Driving and the Canadian staff in 2015 as the Victim Services Manager and moved to the position of Director of Victim Services in January 2017. He's responsible for support to victims in Ontario and Victim Services volunteers. He's also responsible for research and resources to provide support to victims. Steve was a member of the National Board of Directors from 2011 to 2015 and has been an advocate for victims for almost 20 years and was the first federal ombudsman for victims of crime. Steve, we want to welcome you to Life Unrehearsed.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me. And hi to Corrie, if she can hear.
Yeah, we're going to try to get Corrie back, Steve. So it's you and I, and we want to thank you very much for joining us here on a Saturday. Such an important topic. So let's describe, first of all, the history of Mothers Against Drunk Driving and who founded MAD.
Sure, and people may know that MAD actually began in the United States after a woman named Candace Leitner, her 13-year-old daughter was killed, and she sort of started the organization, the movement to strengthen impaired driving laws in 1980. In the early 80s, mid-80s in Canada, we were seeing a number of these sort of small grassroots organizations pop up in different parts of the country that were really focused on preventing impaired driving. None of these were large organizations, grassroots organizations around people's tables. They began to have discussions about, sort of bringing their messages together, had some discussions with MAD US to see if they could establish a similar organization here in Canada. And MAD Canada was formally formed in 1989, which was a national network of victims and survivors and concerned citizens who would work to stop impaired driving. And the organization has grown, quite considerably now, chapters in every part of the country and volunteers everywhere.
And nice to see, such a national network. I believe you're based in Ottawa, and almost a bit of a shame that that you even exist, but we need you, and to hear that you're growing is positive, but at the other end, it's also a message that there's still a lot of work to be done. So first of all, what is MAD's mission?
Our mission is twofold. It's fairly straightforward: to stop impaired driving and to support victims of this violent crime. And so we try to focus. Obviously, we'd love to go out of business, as you mentioned. So our prevention message is incredibly important to try and educate people and bring in laws and regulations to stop impaired driving. But we also know that hasn't happened and is. Hello?
Yep. Hello.
Oh, sorry, I just heard a dial tone there.
All right.
And so, if we ever stop it, that's our goal. But until then, we want to make sure that those who are impacted have support.
Right. Very good. Now, we're talking with Steve Sullivan. He's the Director of Victim Services at MAD. You're listening to Life Unrehearsed. Matt Delvecchio. We're going to try to get Corrie back on the line. Now, it's Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Steve, you're a man. So is there a gender difference when we're considering everything involved in MAD?
No, and we get that question a lot, actually, and obviously the organization was started by a mother who was joined by other mothers, and I think that's where the name came from. But certainly both our American organization and here in Canada, we have both genders involved. We have young and old. Unlike other work I've done in the past in victim services, whereas like domestic violence and sexual assault, disproportionately women who are impacted. We have hate crimes that target people because of their race or sexual orientation. Impaired driving knows no boundaries. It's random. So anybody can be impacted, and certainly anybody who's interested can get involved with MAD Canada or seek services from us.
Right. Nice to hear about that. And, some people may think, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, this is anti-drinking, anti-social, anti-having fun. Is it a prohibitionist organization?
We are not. Our issue is solely impaired driving. So, what people do in the privacy of their homes or, with their friends, the legal consumption of alcohol and or drugs is really their personal business. It becomes the public's business when people get behind the wheel, and so that's our only focus. We didn't take a position in terms of the legalization of marijuana. We don't take a position on, alcohol is obviously legal. That's not for us to decide. Our sole focus is impaired driving.
Right, and that makes a lot of sense. And thank goodness you are there with offering many different types of assistance and services. So I want to get right into that, Steve. What kind of assistance does MAD Canada provide victims and survivors of drunk drivers?
It can vary depending on when someone comes to us and where they are in their journey. So a lot of people will come looking for help with the criminal justice system. They don't understand how the system works. They're been asked to do a victim impact statement. So we can provide information, support, if possible, court accompaniment. We also provide support up and until the parole process. If offenders gone to prison and the parole hearing is coming up. We have many families, depending on what province they're in, who might be going through the civil law process. Some provinces don't allow people to sue, but other provinces do, so we'll provide support through that if we can. We do monthly virtually online support groups. As a national organization, we have people from across the country, so virtually is often the only way to get people together, and those are very positive. But we also, some of our larger jurisdictions can offer in-person support groups as well. We do different types of memorialization. So, we have in some provinces agreements with the provinces to put up road signs on a provincial highway where someone was killed. In other provinces, we have memorial monuments where we can put the names of people who've been lost to impaired drivers. Recently was an announcement in Quebec. We're hoping to get one in Ontario soon. And we have different types of online memorializations, and we've served many more. But the other thing I want to mention is we have a youth bursary program. So we provide one $10,000 bursary and a number of smaller bursaries of $5,000 each year to students to help with their post-secondary education.
Fascinating. I would have never thought of that. It's really incredible, Steve. Listening to Life Unrehearsed with Matt Delvecchio, and we're talking to Steve Sullivan, Director of Victim Services at Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Steve, we have to head out to traffic, but when we come back, you were talking about some of these online support groups. And, it's always difficult and challenging when you know someone that's been affected and been a victim of impaired driving. How do you approach them? How do you talk to them?
Baby, you can drive my car. Yes, I'm gonna be a star. Baby, you can drive my car. And baby, I love you.
And welcome back to Life Unrehearsed. My name is Matt Delvecchio, with Corrie Sirota, and I'm discussing how to stop impaired driving and support victims of this violent crime with Director of Victim Services at Mothers Against Drunk Driving, MAD, Steve Sullivan. We are hoping we've got Corrie back. Corrie, are you there?
I believe so. It's good to hear everybody's voices right now.
All right. We got you back on a phone line, at least good old live radio. Steve, we're going to bring it back to you. And before traffic, Steve, you provide so many services for victims of impaired driving. However, one of the questions we talked about just before traffic was, what do you suggest to someone, say to a victim of an impaired driving crash?
First of all, I'd say hi to Corrie. But I think for me, it's I think simpler is better. Just saying you're sorry whether someone, sorry if you're lost, or I'm sorry that, we work with people who are injured, sorry for your injury. I think listening to people too, if you're going to ask somebody how they're feeling, then listen to their answer. I find that people who've lost a loved one, and most of my work has been with that through impaired driving or violence, they like to talk about their loved one. So I encourage people to ask. When I'm speaking to someone, I ask them about their loved one, and find that most people do like to talk about them. I think what we tell our volunteers and folks is often what not to say, which is we all want to make people feel better, and sometimes when we try to do that, we say the wrong things. Like, if someone's lost a child, we might say, "You're lucky you have other children," right? Or be thankful you have other children. Or if someone was killed in a crash and they died instantly, well, at least they didn't suffer, or they're in a better place. If we talk to someone who was injured in a crash, we might say, "Oh, you're so lucky you survived." But these are people dealing with lifelong injuries and those kinds of things. So, we often talk to people about what not to say, because, we all want to say the right thing, and sometimes we, through no intention, can say some really hurtful things to people that, at a time when they're already hurting, really aren't very helpful. So I think, A, keep it simple, and B, just be careful what you do say and think about it maybe before you do.
Oh, amen to everything you just said, Steve, because I could not agree with it more. Bottom line, less is more, and stop trying to fix it, just listen, right? So someone is a victim of impaired driving, they have their challenges. How do, or the surviving family members, how do they get help?
So the easiest way to reach us, and then, is really just to go through our website, which is mad.ca. Certainly they can call. If they want to call our local chapters or call our national office, all the numbers are there. Our emails for all of our victim services managers from across the country are there. If they just want to look at information, we have resources there about grief and injury and loss. We have videos there about doing impact statements. So our website really is, I think, the easiest place for people to go, and hopefully they find everything they need to reach out to us. And, we'll obviously do whatever we can to walk with people through their journeys.
Listening to Life Unrehearsed with Matt and Corrie, and we're talking about how to stop impaired driving and support victims of this violent crime with the Director of Victim Services at MAD, Steve Sullivan. We're going to be wrapping up soon, Steve, but you talked about volunteers. This is a big, important part of your organization. How can someone volunteer for MAD Canada? Yeah,
we have, I think 100 chapters across the country, thousands of volunteers. So again, our website, mad.ca, if people want to find out what's available in their community, they want to get involved, big or small, you want to be on the board of your local chapter, you just want to come to events or help out at events. It's been a tough time through COVID, like many charities, to do events for our chapters, but we're looking, with the summer coming, I know a lot of our chapters are really eager to get back out in their communities and talk to people.
So I'm going to ask you, in the short amount of time we have left, probably an impossible question, but let's say I see someone who's about to drive impaired. How do you suggest we stop them? Or in this case, I stop them. What do I say?
I think, trying to give them alternatives, whether that's Uber, taxi, public transport, if someone's sober, give them a ride home or stay the night. What we find is, for many people, the notion of you're going to get into a crash and hurt or kill somebody doesn't work that well. We did a survey recently of why people do drive impaired. What they told us is, A, they don't feel impaired, they don't have to drive far, and they think they can just drive carefully. So what people are more worried about is just getting home, often without seeing a police officer. So sometimes talking about the consequences of, getting pulled over, you can lose your license, you can have a criminal record, which is going to impact your jobs, it's going to increase your insurance, it means you can't travel outside of the U.S. So sometimes consequences of impaired driving can be helpful for people to understand, because they're not going to think they're going to get into a crash and hurt anybody. But obviously, and it's hard sometimes. But if you do see someone who is driving impaired and you just can't stop them, then call 911. It's difficult if you know someone, but you might be saving their life for the life of somebody else.
Absolutely, Steve. We have time for one real quick question, and I'm interested in trends. It's generational. You see, my son and children are in their early 20s, and they're so strict about any impaired driving, and it's certainly different than our generation and certainly different than the generation before mine. Is it trending in the right direction? I know we don't want you to exist, but you do. Are we trending in the right way?
Yeah, I mean, I think COVID's thrown, we'll see what happens with the stats for those years. But we have seen, decreases with alcohol impaired driving. We know that the highest risk factor is young people, 16 to 25-ish kind of thing. But we're seeing, I think we're seeing increases in drug impaired driving, and that's been before the legalization of marijuana. I think, like you said, we've done a really good job at educating young people about the risks of alcohol impaired driving. Mm-hmm. We really need to focus on drug impaired driving because people don't often see that as being risky.
Right, makes sense. All right, Steve. Sure. Well, we want to thank you very much for joining us here on Life Unrehearsed.
Well, thank you very much for the time. I appreciate it.
All right. That's the Director of Victim Services at MAD, Steve Sullivan. You could look them up on the website, as Steve mentioned, at MAD, MADD, Canada, and look at all the services they provide. And even if you do want to volunteer or contribute, please support this wonderful organization. Corrie, what do we have coming up on the second half of Life Unrehearsed?
Coming up, coming up on Life Unrehearsed, we have the top 5 trends shaping the future of healthcare in Canada.